The Hangout is live. We are back. Hello, Kevin. How you doing?
Hey, Baldwin, how are you this evening?
I'm very well. I'm glad we're back on the screen. We've been slacking, man. We have been, but that we sort of have a sort of an excuse. We were out traveling together, but we got to
We were
learn.
on the road last week, but yeah, we're regaining the momentum this week.
Yeah, we're back on track, but we got to learn how to do this when we're out there. Huh? That's the whole
Yeah,
purpose.
definitely. It's a
Yeah.
process.
Top of the list right now. All right. And so we're both we're both surrounded by art, I could see. So I don't know about you. This is sort of Chinese. Where's that from?
This is from the American South. Actually, this is by a very a pretty well-known regional folk artist. So
Awesome.
it's probably not as sophisticated as yours, but
I don't
we
know. This
enjoy it.
this is made in this is a cereal product. I mean, this is a consumer product. This from this
Oh, right.
guy called Lam Lee. I think he's from Hong Kong, but probably lives in New York all year long.
Well, this guy's name, I don't know if you can see it, but you can see this where it's signed at the bottom. He goes by the name Cornbread.
Cornbread. Okay, it's really
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, very
It
yeah,
would
very down home Southern American art.
uh,
It's actually painted on plywood.
okay. There's this. I don't know why, but there's an African feel to it.
Yeah, well, we've got some of that in here too. I'm at home today. I just couldn't be bothered to go into the office.
Let's get into this. Okay, so today the topic is all about how do you source great investment opportunities in exotic markets. And but it's not just I don't think we're going to be talking about the typical thing like you need a network, you need to bring it in. What we want to talk about today is something what we find a lot more interesting is it's about building that kind of network that can help you make sure that what you're sourcing really makes sense. So there's four of us at Emerging Frontiers, right? And I mean, even with the four people, we're already doing the kind of things that takes a lot of businesses, a lot more people to do. And the reason for that is, well, first of all, we have a good network, and second of all, I mean, it's in the initial stage, we're not too picky on who wants to come and show their business on our platform. And what we're sort of discovering along the way, this was not intentional, but we're discovering this as we're working, is that there's an enormous power in the wisdom of the crowd when it comes to sourcing deals. Kevin, give us an insight about this.
I think it's a really interesting phenomenon. There was a book, it must be at least 10 years old, called The Wisdom of Crowds, and it's one of those books that gave rise to a cliche, right? And the idea that a large group of people, when they're approached with the same problem, could make a more effective or intelligent decision than any one person could do on their own. And I think it's a really interesting idea, and it's really the crux behind our strategy, right? Which is to build this online platform using all this technology that's only recently become available that lets medium to large sized groups of people look at a particular opportunity and all chip in with their own perspectives, biases based on the geographic region where they grew up, what their own personal and professional experiences have been. And as we're already seeing with the first opportunity that we've listed on Emerging Frontiers, I think we've got the makings of a very sophisticated and efficient due diligence process it's effectively crowdsourced, right? And we were talking about this, when comparing it to the so-called traditional private equity due diligence process.
Absolutely, it's really fascinating. So I guess most of the industry, what they do is they sort of their value proposition, at least in private equity, mostly is we're going to select deals, we're going to do all our homework, and when we're absolutely sure that this has a likelihood of becoming a good investment, that's when we're essentially going to be either putting it in front of our investors or we're going to be putting it into the portfolio. And this is an entirely different approach. This is where can a deal survive the scrutiny of the crowd? And I find this massively interesting because it's also like a group learning experience, isn't it? So rather than, I mean, Kevin, there's obvious, telltales that there's something that you don't want to look at, right? You may be looking at entrepreneurs who basically, there's a few things that don't add up. That they want to do something enormous while they haven't ever done anything small before, or there's these telltales about, how they sort of what they do with their financial resources, and that's pretty obvious when you see it. But the thing is, The interesting part is when you put a deal up on a network like our platform, and you have everybody take a look at it. All these different questions come up from different types of investors who have different experiences, and not only all the investors wind up learning from these questions, but actually the entrepreneurs themselves as well, right?
I think that's absolutely right. If you look at the company that we're currently just launching a campaign on behalf right now, we had our first conference call last Friday, and it was really good. Authenticity seems to be the theme that we're striving for here, and we were talking to the CEO of the company who's currently in calling in from the streets of Jakarta. You can hear all the noises in the background. It was the recording was a bit scratchy, but I think we captured everything, and it was a really good, very well informed call. But what was interesting about it was the feedback we started receiving afterwards from the people that plugged in from around the world. And I think the questions that are coming back to us even now are, yeah, they're really sophisticated and they're really insightful. Questions on everything from the management team's experiences to their sales strategy to potential black swan events that may or may not happen in the markets that they're looking in versus competitive threats. And I think it's very it sounds almost simplistic, but I don't believe, based on my experience, that your typical private equity investment house could manage the due diligence process as seamlessly and as comprehensively as you can with our crowdsourced model. And we talked about this before, right? I think there are some advantages that we could bring to the table here that with a business such as the one we're raising money for, which no private equity fund is going to touch anyway because it's too early stage. But your standard private equity process, excuse me, is several months of due diligence, at the end of which, after a very laborious process, results in a binary decision, right? You either invest or you don't. It's either a go or it's not. And that's all well and good, and it works for the fund. But one thing that we could potentially do here, as we build out our platform, and we're now talking about bringing dozens, if not hundreds, of potential funding sources into a deal, and the process or the outcome is no longer binary, right? We might have a few people invest, we might have several. A deal may get done or it may not, but I think you now have the benefit of large groups of people benefiting from each other's knowledge and their perspectives, and then ultimately everybody can make their own decision. I think it's a really interesting way to start funding businesses.
Yeah, and everybody wins, because sometimes I think a lot of these due diligence processes, they just drag on, and sometimes just the opportunity goes away or weakens, or you wind up sort of burning out the entrepreneurial spark by giving them too much of a dose of a reality that is potential reality but not yet consumed, and so on and so on. So what I find fascinating about it is that not only can an entrepreneur sort of take his business to the platform, immediately sort of validate, first of all, does this idea make sense to investors? And those who are really candid about sharing their, either asking the difficult questions or sharing their advice, man, that could help them build a much better, stronger business. It may even make them realize that there's avenues that they hadn't thought about before with the same value proposition. So I'm very excited about this. So for us, the problem is not really. I think this is obviously something that's very easy to sell to the entrepreneurs out there, because they're going to say like, hell yeah, this totally makes sense to me. I'm going to actually get to have meaningful conversations with world-class investors before I even get funded.
Yeah.
But I guess our challenge really is like, does this really make sense to investors out there? And is this the kind of forum that they want to come and sit in and play in, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's certainly our biggest challenge. I mean, finding people willing to bring deals or opportunities to us, it's very quickly proving not to be a problem, right? I mean, just since we've launched the platform last week, my inbox has been flooded with people bringing projects or trying to introduce me to people with good deal flow. Yeah, I think our biggest challenge is going to be convincing those investors out there who have the ability to participate in these projects to overcome, the trust issues that all of us very naturally and rightfully have. Is this the right community to invest your hard-earned capital with? And I think that the value proposition we can offer here is that, yeah, the four of us, as you mentioned, we've got a good track record of operating in frontier markets. We think we know what a good business looks like, but more importantly, we're bringing in a large number of very switched on, very experienced people alongside us, and people who want to look at an opportunity on the Emerging Frontiers portal are going to benefit from that knowledge. One of the things we're doing right now is we're raising a bit of money for the business, as we've talked about before, so we can build out the online infrastructure. And when complete, we're going to have a very interesting capability that allows people to engage with each other, both on a public forum or even privately between themselves, and talk about a particular opportunity, and give people the opportunity to become influencers based on their level of expertise. I mean, imagine if we're raising money for the African agriculture opportunity, and we've got a gentleman who's just spent the last several decades working in that space in that particular market. He can become a very a key influencer for that community, and it's a great asset to have on side.
Absolutely, and so I guess the message also out there is like, come and check it out. If you're an accredited investor, that is important. You have to be an accredited investor to play with us on this platform. It's just the rules. It's not us. We'd love to be everywhere. That's just the way the world works right now. But if you are, and even if it's just for that learning experience, and even if it's just from picking up by sort of being in the same room with all those sophisticated other investors and looking at deals together, it's definitely, you're very welcome on the platform. So, you know where to find us. It's emergingfrontiers.com. If you're on the main website, it still looks like a new site now. Upper right-hand corner, there's a button called Portal, or you can just go to portal.emergingfrontiers.com, and that's where all that stuff happens. So there you go. That was sort of like a shameless plug, Kevin.
That's all right. There's never any shame in plugs.
All right. This is we're trying to keep this attention span friendly. So let's wrap it up with that. Hopefully we gave you something to think about. And we're going to be back next week, we promise. Right?
Yeah, I believe that's right. I think next week we're talking about impact investing versus charity, right? I mean, what the benefits and the challenges of each, and how it applies to us.
Yeah, we had a mind-twisting conversation with somebody from a very well-known school who's very well-known in this space. And that was an interesting, that was a soul-wrenching, mind-wrenching experience. So we definitely got something to talk about after that, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We should bring him on and get him to talk about it with our listeners in the near future.
Yeah, we'll ask him if he wants to do that first before we reveal his identity, but he's definitely an interesting fellow, isn't he?
Yeah, indeed.
All right, everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you, Kevin, and until soon.
All right. Thanks, Baldwin. Speak next time.
Until soon.